Welcome to the Veterans Archives podcast, where we honor our nation's veterans by preserving and sharing their stories. You can also hear Veterans Archives on Wreaths Across America Radio every Thursday at 5 p.m. To learn more about our mission, watch veteran interviews, or find out how to record a veteran story, please visit veteransarchives.org. And if you or a veteran you know needs support or resources, we encourage you to download the Battle Buddy app from vetlifetoday.org. Today is Monday, June 1st, 2026. We're talking with Robert Tvorik, who served in the United States Army. So good afternoon, Bob.
Hello.
It's okay if I call you Bob, right?
Certainly.
Okay, excellent. We'll start out the very first question. When and where were you born?
On July 18, 1942 in Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay, and did you grow up in Cleveland?
Till I was 12 years old. We moved from there to Wademan, Michigan. And people will say, Wade what?
And what brought you to Michigan?
A long story, but my wife, my mother, grew up in a disjointed family and lived in orphanages, foster home. And two of her brothers got in a little trouble. And the Ohio police would only chase them as far as the Michigan line. And so my Uncle Ralph and Uncle Joe moved up by Mount Pleasant, got a job on a farm up there raising potatoes. And one day, Uncle Ralph called my parents and said, hey, the farm up here, the owner needs something to live on and everything be provided. And so it's yours if you like it. And so we moved to Wademan, Michigan, northwest of Mount Pleasant.
Now, was your dad a farmer by trade already?
No. Actually, they lived in Palmer, Ohio, outside of Cleveland, but I was never on a farm itself.
Okay, so this is a whole new adventure.
It certainly was.
Yeah. Did you have brothers and sisters?
I have three brothers, but none left. I am the oldest living Tvorik in North America.
Okay. Wow, that's quite a heavy load to carry there.
Parents are gone, brothers are all gone, aunts and uncles, and I'm the oldest guy left.
Now, were your brothers older than you, or?
One older. And two younger ones.
Okay. And so they loaded up the car and they moved to Wademan. Now, I know where Wademan is because I used to be the Navy recruiter up in that area, and Wademan was one of my recruiting areas. But anyway, so you loaded up the car and you moved to Wademan. What was that like for you at 12 years old to kind of pack everything up and then head to this farm, which you had never been to before?
Well, it was quite interesting. And the farm had about 10 cows and some pigs and chickens and so on, but it didn't provide much. Actually, a little history there. The farm was owned by a Miles Drawlett in Wademan. You'll see a store, it says George Drawlett and Sons, and they were actually related to John S. Wademan.
So original settlers to that area then.
Yeah. And we ended up, Miles Drawlett willed that farm to my parents. My father was a person very caring for people and so on. Miles ended up having health problems, and my father would go down and take care of him, help him. My mother got quite disturbed about it, and she said, Vera, one of these days, Miles is going to take care of us. And she said, you believe that shit? You're going to get nothing. They have 200 acres. Wasn't the best farmland, but the 200-acre farm was left by Miles to Frank and Vera Tvorik.
So they inherited the farm.
Yes.
And so what kinds of things did you do on the farm? I'm assuming all the boys got to work at the farm.
We sure did work on that farm. We helped haul hay. We helped take care of the cows. We did everything on the farm. Didn't provide much of a living, though.
Right.
Beale City, just a few miles east of us, is all very rich Saginaw Valley farmland. Wademan and on west is sand.
Mm-hmm.
And so my mother ended up getting a job at a General Electric plant that was open south of us, 28 miles away. My father ended up working at the school in Wademan as a janitor, and things ended up improving. Unfortunately, my dad passed away. They were building a house, new house. He passed away just before the house was finished, never saw the house.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, the first occupancy was at the time of his funeral. My relatives from Cleveland came up, and we stayed in that house for the first time.
Wow.
My mother ended up with enough income and money that she took trips around the world, was able to buy a new car. She lived a far different life than what she grew up in.
Yeah. And this whole time, though, you and your brothers are going to school then, right? In Wademan?
School, the Wademan Community School. Actually started out Sherman Township Rural Agricultural School. People today don't know the fact that buses then were red, white, and blue. And so that's where we went to school.
What was school like for you during that time?
Well, it was different. I grew up in Cleveland, went to a Catholic school, St. Wendelin. So we moved to Wademan and started out in the third grade. And it was different, but it was good.
Mm-hmm. Did you make a lot of friends?
Yes, and we'll get into that probably in a moment about how I was as a student.
Yeah.
Wademan.
Well, let's talk about that.
Okay. It'll be in my story, but I grew up very introverted, quiet, low self-confidence, and ended up a lot of my time was spent out in the hallway in a chair rather than in the class. You get attention when the teacher kicks you out of the room and says get out in the hallway.
Mm-hmm.
And so Bob got attention. As things went on, small class, but my friends that I was good with ended up, they were kind of different. They were college bound eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And in joining up with them, I made a change and ended up getting grades and becoming a better student became part of my life. And so I moved on from there.
Now, did you have any favorite subjects in school? Anything you really liked?
Yes, and I'll tell you, it was a psychology class.
Oh.
And it relates a lot to my interest today. I ended up getting the best grade in that class. Even today, I have strong interest. I actually have a business degree, but I have a minor in psychology. I ended up subscribing to Psychology Today.
Mm-hmm.
I even today follow media, things that have to do with relationships with people, and enjoy very much.
So it really stuck with you all those years.
Really has.
Yeah.
People to have a degree, a minor in psychology when you're a business student was different.
Right. I feel like that might help you in business, though, to understand people, right?
It did, and part of it, communication, relationship type style, people. I really did like a class in abnormal psychology,
Mm-hmm.
which today I'm again very much involved. The current Guthrie issue, for example, I'm following very, very closely. A little off the subject, but a while back, listening to a program, and the presenter asked the question, you had to do over with, what area would you have gone into, as far as career? And I answer that question today, it would be forensic psychology.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't want to be an undercover police agency, but try to understand what makes people do what they do. How do you evaluate? How do you figure out? So I would have been the office job in forensic psychology.
I think it would have been fascinating, right?
Yes.
So you let's go back a little bit though. So you make it through school. You graduated high school, I'm assuming, and then so what happens after high school?
As I said, followed my friends that were going on to college and applied to two schools that are known, Michigan State University.
Mm-hmm.
Very high regard for Michigan State. My wife got her master's there. Both of my kids got their bachelor's degrees. And also applied to Central Michigan University. But my wallet wasn't thick enough to go on to Michigan State.
Mm-hmm.
I did visit there, and one of my best friends in class, Chuck Newbecker, ended up with a summa cum laude in chemical engineering, went on to get a master's at the University of California in Berkeley. And so I ended up commuting for the first year.
Mm-hmm.
Parents had a car I could use. I mentioned my mother working at the General Electric plant in Edmore. They hired students of employees only. I worked, amazing, long time ago. But I ended up working every hour I could. Bob Fields was my foreman.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked 28 days straight at one point. Bob, you want to work this weekend? Yes, sir. That time and a half on Saturdays, that double time on Sundays, looks pretty good in my bank account.
Yeah.
So after the first year, I was going to transfer to Michigan State, but I would have lost too many credits and so on to make it feasible to do that. And so I moved in a 9 Merrill Hall on Central's campus. Worked in the cafeteria in the morning, and I ended up with a pretty good life at Central Michigan.
Mm-hmm. Now, is that where you got your bachelor's in business?
Where I got my degree from Central Michigan.
Okay.
Where I went on. ROTC was mandatory the first 2 years.
You know, I don't think a lot of people realize that, but most of the colleges had an ROTC program that you had to participate in. Yeah.
So we'll talk probably more in depth about that, but I went on to advanced ROTC.
Mm-hmm.
Paid $28 a month from the government for going on to ROTC. With the money that I had, with working, with that $28 a month, I could take a girl out and have pizza or something and have a good time.
Yeah.
It did cost me a little in the fact that I didn't know what I was going to go into in school. People said, well, just take whatever you'd like. Don't worry about it. So I did. As I mentioned, the psychology. Well, they only had so many hours of electives.
Right.
So I had used up my electives, particularly with going on to advanced ROTC. And so I ended up going back another semester. So instead of graduating in June 65, I ended up graduating in January of 66.
Mm-hmm.
got my commission, and went on from there.
All right. So let's talk about that. So what happens after college then? And when did your dad pass away? Was it during this time, or was it later on?
It was during that time.
Uh-huh.
After I graduated, I was assigned to Fort Lee, Virginia. They were organizing a new unit, and I got there, was the first person there. Didn't really have a need for me yet, so they sent me on to Camp A.P. Hill up in Northern Virginia, kind of like our Camp Grand.
Yeah.
And I was kind of a non-needed, so I was told, hey, go to the post office, go check things out. So I spent some time there. Got back to Fort Lee and checked in. As I said, I was the first person there. And we organized a new unit. John McMillan was a regular Army officer, and he was the company commander. I ended up being the executive officer. To this day, he's passed away recently, but John McMillan and I have been very close relationship. I was also the supply officer.
Mm-hmm.
Was very interesting to go down and pick up equipment and sign for it. We had trucks, came from Diamond Reel, Lansing, Michigan, brand new trucks. And so I signed for those, and we had that equipment as well as a lot of other petroleum equipment.
Yeah. A lot of responsibility as the supply officer, mostly to keep the company commander out of trouble.
And that supply officer is responsible for that equipment that he signed for.
Right.
And if there should be a shortage or whatever, he's responsible to make up the difference. There's a story about that we'll get into either now or perhaps later.
Oh, we could talk about it now while it's fresh on your mind.
Okay. We moved on to Vietnam, put all our equipment hauled to Norfolk, Virginia, and transported on to the Panama Canal on to Vietnam. We flew to Oakland Army Terminal and were transported on the General Walker troop ship, 17 days across the Pacific. There was a typhoon in the South China Sea. And so we stopped shortly in the Philippines, through the San Bernardino Straits and on, went northwest up to the area to escape the typhoon, and headed south to Vietnam, stopped in Nha Ho, and we got to Vietnam. It was interesting. The ship dropped us off onto transport vehicles, and we went on to the shore like they did in Normandy. I always wondered about that.
Yeah.
Why? There was a pier there. Why didn't we just pull up to the pier and drop off? I found out later that the water was too shallow for the Walker troop ship to pull up to that pier. So they had to drop us off out earlier. And so we got there in April of '66, dry as a bone, till a month or so later when the typhoon or the monsoon hit.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, back to the story about the equipment. We were the 528 QM parentheses PS, petroleum supply. We supplied the 9th Infantry, primarily, and other units with petroleum. People aren't aware that there are 3 ways to defeat an enemy. One is hand-to-hand combat. Number 2 is to deny them supplies.
Mm-hmm.
The infantry doesn't do too well without ammunition, without petroleum. Those tanks don't do very well
Right.
when they run out of fuel. So the 528 was very important. We transported fuel in 5,000-gallon trailers, but we might be hauling diesel fuel, and the next load to transport was JP4, fuel for jet planes.
Mm-hmm.
So what we did was put JP4 in that truck and then hauling diesel, and then flush it out at a pit. The regulations required that when disposing of that fuel into the pit, there must be a fire truck available. Fine. But there was only one fire truck in the area. The airport had planes coming in worse shape than when they left.
Right.
So they needed the fire truck. An agreement was made that, okay, we'll keep the fire truck at the airport primarily, but when the fuel that was being disposed of needed to be fire to be rid of, we'll bring the fire truck over and dispose of it. So one day, PFC Reynolds goes out to dispense of this fuel, and all of a sudden, poof, perhaps from the previous disposal, there was still some heat left, enough to ignite that fuel.
Yeah.
And that 5,000-gallon trailer was burnt to smithereens. PFC Reynolds was a black guy, but he turned white. And mentioning the responsibility for now one less vehicle.
Right.
Well, it wasn't an easy thing to cover this problem. It went through the various channels. But it was said that the supply officer, the company commander, is now responsible for that piece of equipment. I went through holy hell with that, trying to keep from being responsible to pay the government for a disposed of vehicle.
Right.
Because it was against regulation, so-and-so. Finally, somebody from Saigon, sitting up in the office, took charge of this and got it written off as a combat issue.
Yeah. Combat loss, right?
Yep. So
Yeah.
I finally got a piece of paper that when I turned over the supply, that accounted for 19 instead of 20, say.
Mm-hmm.
That was a very difficult situation to deal with.
I'll bet you still have that piece of paper somewhere.
It was a heck of a deal.
Yeah. Yeah. And now, how long were you in Vietnam?
A year.
Okay.
I actually extended a month. Some of the other officers got their replacement would come in. So the existing officer kind of relaxed.
Yeah.
My replacement came in a day before.
No relaxation for Bob, right?
There was going out and
Yeah.
relaxing. That happening. But I extended a month so I wouldn't have to go to Fort Dix, New Jersey,
Mm-hmm.
and spend a little bit of time someplace. I don't know if this is the appropriate time to tell the whole story, but we had sent an advance party over to Vietnam.
Yep.
Lieutenant Soma was in charge of the advance party, went over. He said one day, "Hey, Bob, you ever have some time in San Francisco? Go to the Condor Club or Big Al." I later learned that they were strip club type places. But I got discharged in Oakland. Decided that I would go and visit Big Al's. Sounded an interesting thing.
Yeah.
So I went and got a cab. Told Big Al that I wanted to go to Big Al's. And he said, "Fella, that is not around the corner. That isn't going to be a cheap trip." I said, "Hey, I got a thick wallet. I just got paid off and discharged. Take me there." Okay, we went. It was kind of cool, maybe the 50s, as I recall,
Yeah.
kind of a light rain. And we got there, and there were a lot of folks they called protesters,
Mm-hmm.
holding up signs, things like baby killers. Well, I was not in the mood to really want to relax and enjoy Big Al. So take me to the airport. I went to the airport, got a flight on American Airlines, and it was a wonderful experience. I was treated like a royalty, flew to Detroit, and then on to another flight to Saginaw. My mother picked me up there and went on to Wademan.
So full circle.
Yeah.
Full circle. So this would have been what, 68, 67, 68?
68.
Yeah.
April of 68.
Yeah.
Leaving. Left from Thompson Air Base outside of Saigon.
Uh-huh.
When that plane left that runway and pulled off, there was a roar like I've never heard. Far more of a roar than any athletic event where you win the national championship in basketball by 1 point, coming from behind. It was a roar more than any other activity. I suspect that a lot of these other guys were probably combat soldiers,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going home.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, I remember this day what that was like, that roar. We went on to stop at Yokota, Japan. And from Yokota on to Anchorage. I had on my khaki short sleeve shirt, sitting in the second row of that plane, and we landed at Anchorage, Alaska. When you opened that door, snowflakes were blowing in. Wow, what a change.
A lot different from Vietnam, huh?
It sure was. And so that was, from there, on to, like I say, back to Oakland.
Yeah. Well, how did it feel to be back home on American soil?
Well, it was great. Probably jump around here a bit, but after being back, a niece of mine said, "Uncle Bob," her son was writing a paper, and he would like to talk to someone who has been to Vietnam. Would you mind talking to him? I said, yes, of course. So we talked, and he had a couple of questions. One was what was it like being there? Well, the Army calls the things a tour.
Right.
It really wasn't a tour. His other question, though, was more catching. And that was, were you scared?
Yeah.
And I explained to him that in many functions, whether it's police work, firemen, first responders, there is risk with all of them. You cannot sit and be overwhelmed by the fact you may be in an area that is not risky, comfortable, and so on. What you do is accept that as part of your job. So I accepted it. You can't get over there and just be a nervous wreck. You have to control your emotions, not let your emotions control you. And so, yes, there were times where it wasn't the most comfortable, and so on. And we'll probably talk about some of that. Because I'm going a little off course here, maybe around, but there are two men that have in me in my life I've had the greatest respect for, that have really helped me get to where I am. One I mentioned, Captain John McMillan, regular Army officer. One day, I went in and had a conversation with him. I don't remember now what it was about. But he said, Bob, you've got a job to do. I have got a job to do. I am not going to do your job. If you run into something that's beyond your pay grade, where it's necessary, come back. Otherwise, get the hell out of here and go do your job. I did. The other is Colonel William B. Nolde. He was my mentor in ROTC. We had to write a paper. I wrote mine. Japan versus U.S. Why? And as I mentioned, I grew up as very introverted, quiet, and so on. After we were in Vietnam, about 3 months, Captain McMillan got promoted up to 53rd Group Headquarters. They needed a new company commander. A guy that was the executive officer would be a good one. So they called me in, they moved me up. Some of those past experiences would come back. How does this guy that is a nervous, no self-confidence guy at one time and so on, he can't go out in front of his unit and wet his pants. No, he goes out, guys, we got a job to do. Let's get at it. Puts on a good show. These guys never knew my background.
Yeah.
But one day, I'm at the officers' club. I go in and sit down, and guess who I saw but Colonel Nolde, was the major when I first met him. Hey, Lieutenant, how are you doing? Well, pretty good, but, I've had some anxieties recently and so on. Really? What about? So I told him the story about becoming a company commander. He said, Lieutenant, you just do your job the best you can. That's all anybody can ask of you. I have remembered that. I have, to this day, throughout my career after the military, remembered that.
Mm-hmm.
So he's important to me as my ROTC mentor. We had a lot of other conversations about what going into the military is going to be like. That personal guidance type guy. But there's another part of it. After that conversation in Vietnam, he is the last casualty of Vietnam. A few hours after they agreed to call a halt to things, he was killed in an artillery attack. I will remember Colonel Lowley every day of my life.
Yeah.
An important man to me. Makes me think right now about him.
Yeah.
I can picture him.
Isn't it amazing that if you look at your whole life, that was a very short period of time in your life, but it really made a difference. It really gave you a lot of tools that you've used since. It sounds like. Now, is there anything else about Vietnam that you want to talk about?
Let's take a quick break.
Before we continue, we'd like to share a resource that may be helpful to veterans and their families. The Battle Buddy app from vetlifetoday.org is designed to connect veterans with support, resources, and a community that understands their experiences. If you or a veteran you know could benefit from those resources, we encourage you to download the Battle Buddy app and learn more at vetlifetoday.org.
We could talk for hours. Yes, I've covered some of the parts that I was prepared to share.
Okay.
As I mentioned, growing up as the youngster and so on, the great things. As I mentioned, our unit supplied fuel to primarily the 9th Infantry,
Mm-hmm.
which was headquartered in the Mekong Delta. One of my platoons was assigned to Dong Tam. When I see a person with a Vietnam hat on, I will walk up and introduce myself and ask where a fellow Vietnam vet served.
Mm-hmm.
Vietnam is a long country. Like California, it's actually longer than is California. One person so far that I've talked to has never mentioned Dong Tam. Nothing but a mud hole.
Mm-hmm.
Another platoon was attached to a unit in Can Tho. Got a picture of it, the airfield, elevation 7 feet at Can Tho. I spent a good amount of time in Huey helicopters, flying back and forth to the various sites. Kind of going back to things about Vietnam, I was tasked with conducting a session to provide our troops with info about Vietnam. Brings up a story. When we were at Fort Lee, Virginia, they didn't really tell us where we're going. Some units were going to other places, could be Thailand or other places in Laos in Asia. But one day, young private and I were talking. He said, "Lieutenant, sir, I know where we're going." I said, "Really?" "I don't." He said, "We're going to Vietnam." "How do you know that?" He said, "Well, we turned in our laundry, and our laundry came back dyed green. Others came back white. The greeners are going to Vietnam." He was right. I learned that.
The enlisted guys definitely they're like plugged in, aren't they?
Yeah, they pick up on things. And so, anyway, about the history of Vietnam, I'm a history buff.
Mm-hmm.
I knew something of Vietnam before ever going there. Recently, over Memorial Day, I get very involved in Memorial Day activities. Starts out with the Memorial Parade in Grand Ledge. Our American Legion unit will be part of that parade. But it goes back to Vietnam, the French colonization. Eventually, they were defeated at the Battle of Dien Bien Phu, and I know about the geography of the place. I meant to say earlier, over the Memorial Day, watching many programs, movies, and so on, the percentage of people here at home did not know what Vietnam was.
Right.
Didn't, but they learned later. But I knew about Vietnam. I wanted to see it. So I'm going to get off on a little bit of a tangent here. One day I go back into the officers club again, and one of the guys that I had met and developed a relationship with was a special forces guy. And so "Hey, Bob, I've got to run up to Cu Chi in a couple of days, pick up some paperwork. Would you like to run up with me?" Yes, yes, yes. The next morning, I get a call from our battalion commander, his name was Frank Coos. "Lieutenant, get in my office now." I went, checked in with him, and he said, "What do you think you are, a goddamn tourist over here or what?" I was shocked. And he said, "Do you have any idea what I'm talking about?" "No, sir, I don't." "Well, this idea that you're going to tour around this country is not going to happen. You are staying here. I don't want to ever hear this kind of thing again." Okay, so that was it. I wanted to see the Central Highlands. I wanted to see something else. But all I saw, was the mud of places like that. So after that conversation, he told me to get back to my unit. And so moved on from there. We talked about some of the other incidences of having the fire of the vehicle. I had a situation where had this young private, was always in a bit of trouble. I had guys working 10, 12 hours a day. Remarkable what these guys were doing. Except for this young private. Had about enough of it. Article 15 didn't change his way. So I set him up for a higher level of discipline. He got sent to LBJ. LBJ stood for Long Bin Jail.
Oh.
Benoit.
Uh-huh.
So one day, one of the other officers, battalion, told me, Lieutenant, you got a congressional coming down. I had no idea what he was talking about. So he explained to me. There were a lot of things going on over here. And his mother probably got a different story from what the real story. Well, our politicians want to get reelected. They want to appease their voters.
Right.
So they're going to do what they can for the voters. So they take this and they elevate this on up through channels, eventually up to the Department of the Army and wherever. Ends up going through the air, back down through the units of Vietnam, back down through 53rd Group, down to the 2nd Maintenance Battalion.
Mm-hmm.
And they came up with the requirement that he not be left there to sit there and just be taken advantage of. We're going to be nice. So I had to go visit him. I don't know whether it was every 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it was. Had to go up there to Long Bin, meet up with him, say, Private, how are things going? Hope things are going well for you. We really miss you. We can't wait for you to get back. Oh, boy. Well, that might have been pretty good for Wayne, but it was an experience for me. Get out in the airfield. I got a flight living at $1,400. It's now $1,600. There's no plane. $1,800. A Huey helicopter comes in. Get on, we're going to Benoit. We get out in the air, and all of a sudden, that aircraft got a notice or some required emergency type trip or something. So they pull in some base camp and dump you off. Stay overnight, watch motors going off, and the next day, hopefully get back to go see Wayne.
Mm-hmm.
So his experience was a lot more comforting than mine.
Yeah.
Saw a lot of country, though, flying around in Huey helicopters. And so that was part of it. We're going into the countryside that I did see. Well, my main unit's operation was fairly secure. We were on a peninsula, Mung Tao Peninsula, and so things were pretty good. Had a nice officers club, get a beer and so on. But we spent a lot of time out on convoys, hauling this fuel. The Viet Cong knew that disrupting that was in their interest.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a picture log, pictures I've taken there, one showing labeled as another pothole, where we're going down these 2-track roads, and all of a sudden, some explosive pulled the hole in the road. So now we have to go in a defensive posture. Now, we were guided by infantry and aircraft, which gets me off course again talking about aircraft. I'd heard about B-52 bombers, but really didn't have real experience with a B-52 bomber. One day I'm watching out and I see these bombers are dropping these bombs off some distance away, and they flew over us. Count 8 engines and so on. So it wasn't always the most desirable thing to do. I certainly don't want to, in any way, not be respectful to the infantry. I have the greatest respect for the infantry. One of my high school classmates, Elmus Brown, was in the infantry. One of those guys hauling their M16 over their head, going through waterways and so on.
Yeah.
He was special to me because going back to the life at Wademan, his parents didn't live in one place any too long. And it's our senior year of school, and the parents are moving on. Knowing the life my mother had, she took concern and ended up, he lived with us that last year at our home. Did a lot of things together with him. We had a lot of contact. So Elmus Brown, an infantry troop, doing it. Back at Wademan, I mentioned Bill City perhaps. Another friend, Don Schmidt, was a Special Forces officer. He was killed in Vietnam. So I am Lucky Bob, but I still have feelings for those that didn't make it back.
Right.
And so now we're back in Vietnam. We're hauling, this petroleum. I've seen how many millions of gallons we hauled. I do have a positive feeling about what we did for supporting those troops. Certainly in no way. I mentioned I don't want to have a Vietnam hat or license plate because I don't want to call attention to myself, because my real tribute is to those guys. But I've been through some areas there. Part of that, I mentioned many people don't really know anything about the country of Vietnam. Let's know about what the Tet Offensive was. Many areas that we'll call secure, safe, whatever you want to call them, had a drastic change, including Saigon. One of the towns that Maria we went through never really had any problem until the next time we went through and saw bodies stacked up on a corner. So about the Tet Offensive, it's in effect a national holiday, like our New Year's. Very important to the people there. They would suspend combat for a Tet period of a couple of days. The Viet Cong chose to disregard that this time. they put a great deal of effort into preparing for tech, hauling materials down through Cambodia, through the Mekong Trail, very well supplied. All of these areas that were previously safe.
Mm-hmm.
And they hit all these areas during the Tet Offensive. I mentioned previously the Mekong Delta, the Mekong River tributaries. The VC had been conducting operations in the Mekong. But all of a sudden, they chose to now increase their activities. And that's where I mentioned perhaps the great respect I have for the Navy, because the Navy started escorting us, hauling those barges. At first, we were transporting as much as we could by aircraft, but that's a very limited amount. So through the Mekong, the Navy supporting us was great.
It changed things for you.
It really helped us do our job.
Yeah.
So the tour, as it's called, of doing in Vietnam was for 1 year, but during that year, each person was given an R&R, rest and recuperation, of a week. I chose to not go to someplace like Hawaii because married guys would want to see their wives in Hawaii. There are only so many slots and so on.
Right.
I can always go to Hawaii. Thought about Australia, but I decided, why don't I go someplace that I'm probably not going to get to? Singapore was to the west. So I went to Singapore. It was a very enjoyable time, good restaurants, bars, entertainment. And so that was, my visit there.
Now, how long was your R&R? Was that 2 weeks?
1 week.
Oh, just 1 week. Okay.
I think I mentioned earlier that I extended for a short period so that I could leave, and we went on from there, ended up back in
So you extended for a month so that you would be just discharged when you got back,
yeah,
right?
from there.
Gotcha. Okay. And that's when you ended up in Oakland and then flying home.
Yeah. Stopped at Yokota, Japan on the way back.
Uh-huh.
That was interesting. Only officers could get off and go in. So after I got back, I ended up getting a job at Michigan National Bank. It was the oldest bank in Michigan. And moved on when LaSalle Bank in Chicago bought the bank. Then PNC Bank bought the payment processing part that I was involved with.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, Bank of America took over from PNC. Bank of America, the best business I ever worked for. Treated us very well, not like just some big all-world business. They gave us stock. They treated us very well. And so I ended up retiring from the Bank of America.
So you were in the banking industry your whole time after the service then?
Yes, but I did skip part of it. I don't know why.
That's why I'm here.
Actually, I should move this around. When I got back, I had job offers from some well-known companies.
Mm-hmm.
Ryder Truck Rental is out of Miami. Chicago Board of Trade in Chicago. And as my father had died while I was in the Army, my mother was now on her own. Didn't really want to go to someplace like Miami. And so I wanted to stay closer to home.
Yeah.
One of the fellows that I had a relationship with in the Army was with a placement agency, Snelling and Snelling, and we got together, and he was opening a new operation here in Lansing called Availability Personnel, and I joined up with him. Had an office with nothing but a card table and a couple of chairs, and we ended up developing the search business. Things went quite well, but later on he just started having some, I think, mental problems.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had decided to go off on my own, along with another person whose name was Sherman Marzoff. Well, I had named the business Technicon Engineering Services because I'm going to specialize in the technical field.
Mm-hmm.
I got a correspondence from a business in Connecticut, Technicon Instruments Corporation, accusing me of misusing their name,
Mm-hmm.
with a requirement to cease and desist using the name Technicon. I was not able to fight them, so I did. So I changed the name to Sherman Marzoff, not Sherman Marzoff, to Shermtech, with my Technicon and his Marzoff name.
Yeah.
We did fairly well, but there were times when things monetarily were a little tough. Had a person that worked with us that I had hired. He was going to handle things in the computer area, and one of our clients invited him to join their company. So he sold me on the idea how it would be very helpful if he were with this other new company. He would know businesses in the computer area, and he could drive business our way.
Mm-hmm.
Marzoff decided that he would like to be in a warmer area, I guess. Why don't we start a branch in Florida? Many candidates that we would recruit would want to move to a different area, move south. So I saw that as a very good opportunity to have a candidate from here that wanted to go there, we could trade, and Marloff would place him in Florida.
Yeah.
Well, I ended up getting more bills and things than I did revenue coming in from there.
Not a good business model.
Wasn't working well. I was working my tail off. And I did not want to fail.
Right.
Little pause, because one day, to give an example of that, my wife and some friends were going to get together on a Friday and have a get-together and so on. Well, I got involved with a conversation with a client in California, 3 hours time difference. I can't tell a guy, hey, I got to move on. I
got a party to get to.
Nope. You take care of that client. And so when I finally joined the group, they were all snockered out and so on. But I could not quit.
Yeah.
I was doing fairly well and had a couple of other people. One day, I had a situation. My wife said, Bob, we got a bunch of bills coming this month. You think you'd be able to help out with some of them? I said, yeah, I've got a deal going that is going to be a very lucrative deal. Looks very, very promising. And it did. It came through with a very large revenue producer.
Mm-hmm.
But the other people I have weren't doing so well. They were more 8-to-5ers. And I was providing them an advance. And that advancing hit my checkbook account pretty hard.
Yeah.
So one day I told my wife, sorry to tell you this, but the deal fell through. I'm not going to be able to make it. That is one of the most tragic things of my life. I believe in honesty. To tell her that I lost the deal. On one hand, I want to be happy, proud, feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other hand, to tell her, sorry, I lost the deal. Very, very painful. So I made a decision. That's it. I had done work with Michigan National, and that's where the woman, Linda, somehow I had to tell her about it. And she said, Bob, if you need a job, we want you. That's how I took the job with Michigan National. I've gone through the ups and downs. I've worked. I believe in work. Can't tell anybody. No. So that's when I ended up retiring from Bank America. Very happy with it. I'll kind of finalize this by saying that I don't call attention to myself. I do feel I served well. I am grateful for the relationships that I did develop. And it's been just one heck of an experience. And I'll kind of leave that with talking about experience. One day, I had a person ask me, Bob, you're a Vietnam vet. I'd like to ask you a question. Should we have been there? And I said, how we got involved was after the French were defeated, the communists were taking over, the Chinese, blended with the Vietnamese that were the North Vietnamese. And things carried on. They decided they were going to blend back together one country of Vietnam. The United States got involved by supporting the South Vietnamese with helpfulness as far as warfare and so on, but not military
Right.
battle part of it. Things progressed on. Well, okay, we did start sending troops. Eventually, 500,000. We had over 58,000 casualties. The way our intentions were well. I was, we'll say, indoctrinated with the theory that if the Viet Cong take over Vietnam, they will also take over Thailand and Laos. So we had a good reason to be there to see that that did not happen. We had good intentions, but the way things evolved were not good. I'm aware what was going on here back home with the protesting, the Kent University killing, all the other things. But horrible the way our troops coming back were treated. They didn't choose to get involved in a war. Those were drafted, didn't go there because it was their idea. But the way things developed, the way we pulled out our troops. We eventually pulled out our military support. We left the Vietnamese on their own. We left there, leaving off from the embassy out to ships, and we left that country. So when I look at it today, should we have been there the way it evolved? No. Initially, we had good intentions, yes, but not the way we left it. And so it's unfortunate. That's where we are.
Well, Bob, I'd like to ask you another question, too. Sure. First, is there anything that we haven't covered that you wanted to cover? Or have you covered everything that you wanted to talk about
pretty
today?
well there.
Okay. Then my last question then really is this. Years from now, when someone is listening to your story or watching this story, what message would you like to leave for people? What piece of advice would you like to give folks long after you and I are gone?
Just a general point is getting into wars. Understand that there is a sufficient, reasonable requirement, not politically. Our present situation with Iran, I have a concern. Our involvement has to do with Iran developing a nuclear weapon. How dangerous, really, is that to us, the United States? If they were to foolishly attack using a nuclear weapon, we have got far more nuclear weapons. Hiroshima and Nagasaki would be a very small response, what they would end up getting. And so I really have a question now. Would they really use that against us? I don't think so. So be careful about what we get into. If you're in the military, understand your obligation, a duty. Like Colonel Lowley said, do your job the best you can. Do what's honorable. Don't be a guy like Wayne to be doing inappropriate things while your fellow troops are wearing themselves out. Mm-hmm. Because I got to tell you, I just have great respect for the guys that I saw that were wore out. Now, as they say, I watch a lot of military. Being in combat in World War II, in Korea, it is horrible. Talk about being wore out. Probably more wore out than my guys were. But do your job. And so I appreciate this conference. I think it's helpful to me probably more than anybody else will get out of it. I'm happy that I served. I'm happy that I got back. I can honestly feel I did my job. And that's the end of it.
All right. Well, thanks for spending the afternoon with me, Bob. I really appreciate it. And let me say welcome home, and we're glad that you did make it back.
Well, I enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to the Veterans Archives podcast and for helping us honor the service and sacrifice of our nation's veterans. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing it with others so more people can hear these important stories. To learn more about our mission, watch additional veteran interviews, or find out how to record a veteran story, please visit veteransarchives.org. And if you or a veteran you know needs support or resources, we encourage you to download the Battle Buddy app from vetlifetoday.org. You can also hear Veterans Archives on Reads Across America Radio every Thursday at 5 p.m.